Do you know the Muffin Man? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Criminally Human. I am your host, and before we jump into this video, I just wanted to have a little bit of fun. Somebody said, I bet she won't speak on the Mormons. Then she threw in this creepy little line talking about blood and DNA matter. I am glad that that bloodline and DNA is not a part of who I am because I don't need no secret birthright to give me permission to speak the truth. I don't need a temple recommended. I don't need a last name, and I damn sure don't need permission to call out what they try to hide. I'm not afraid of the Mormons. I am not afraid of a Doug Wilson. I am not afraid of any so called spiritual empire that thinks that it can hide behind heritage and holy walls. Sweetheart, you bet that I would not do this, but here I am. And if blood and DNA really do matter, then let's talk about the blood that was spilled and the DNA from those victims that were ignored while institutions protected those predators. I keep telling y'all, the more shit you talk, the deeper I'm going to go. Tonight, I'm not choosing to take a knee and kneel. Pun very much intended. Then you had the nerve to say old Dougie Doug would school me. School me? That man plagiarized history, whitewashed slavery, and still failed ethics. I am not a student in his classroom. I am the examiner grading his lies. That fool could not school me if he was handing out pencils at recess. This video is dedicated to you, Miss Mouth Almighty. You wrote a check with your mouth, and now here are the receipts to cash it. Let's get it. Let's go. So now let's shine the light. Because when you say that blood and DNA matter, let me challenge you and ask you, what about the blood of the victims? What about the DNA collected in cases where leaders stayed silent? What about the children whose bloodlines were destroyed because the institutions chose protection over the truth? If blood and DNA actually mattered so much, then they should matter most when predators hide under pulpits and behind temple walls. Right, Lucy Loose? Look at Idaho. Let's start with one name. Let's start with John Goodrich. Not a rumor, not a whisper. That is a man who once stood as a Mormon bishop. This is a man whose own daughter accused him of years of abuse. She said it happened in their Idaho home. She said it followed her into her teenage years. And when she finally tried to speak, you know what that Mormon church did? It didn't stand with her at all. Her and her mother met with the church's own risk management director, Paul, and those conversations were recorded in the tapes. Mr. Paul offered that child and her mother $300,000, not to heal, not to protect her, but to stay silent and go ahead and sign a confidentiality agreement while you're at it. And y'all wanted to destroy the recordings, never speak about it again, and that was the solution. But when prosecutors tried to take the case forward, the church shut it down with a loophole. The bishop who heard the confession refused to testify. And the reason why he refused to testify was because he wanted to say it was clergy privilege because he had already confessed to him. Once again, that predator walked free and the church stayed clean. The victim was the one that was left carrying those scars. So, girl, let's go ahead and talk about the Mormons. You know, the ones that you said you bet I wouldn't speak about. Let's go ahead and detail exactly what those accusations were that was made against this piece of filth, John Goodrich. Yes, I said a piece of filth. So John was not just a random member of the Church of Latter-day Saints. He was actually a bishop, a person that was trusted as a spiritual authority figure, and this girl's father. I could never imagine my father, the man that's supposed to protect me against people like this, causing this amount of harm to me. That is ridiculous. I'm going to withhold his daughter's name out of respect for her and her trauma, but her trust was shattered by her own father. She accused him of sexually abusing her, starting in her childhood and continuing throughout her teenage years. The abuse happened in places where she should have been safe, in her home and while traveling for school activities. So while people like you and to the outside world saw this man as a respected bishop, this little baby saw him as her predator. So to be clear, in 2017, this baby and her mother went to the church, had a conversation with Paul over at the risk management director. Those meetings were recorded on tape. This man offered them $300,000 to stay silent, a so-called settlement that would require this child and her mother to sign away their right to sue, to destroy the recordings and never speak about that abuse again. So instead of accountability, she was offered hush money. That's what happened. Because he refused to come forward and testify and wanted to come with the whole clergy confidentiality, the charges were dropped and he walked free. The church protected itself, not the child who was harmed. But here's the good part. Like how y'all say, look at God, here's the good part. In 2024, he was arrested again in Virginia. This arrest was based on his daughter's testimony, the same daughter he had harmed years earlier in Idaho. He was charged with multiple felonies, including rape, forcible sodomy, and aggravated sexual battery. And her persistence finally forced accountability in the Idaho system that had denied her, and actually goes to say, dag, she was telling the truth the entire time. This case is a clear example of how silence, privilege, and institutional protection destroys victims. It's not just about one man, it's about an entire system that prioritizes image over truth and predators over children. See, here's the thing. You don't know me, because if you did, then you would know that no one is off limits when it comes to exposing these people and they nasty, dirty little deeds. I don't care if it's a pastor, a bishop, a prophet, whoever. If your hands are dirty, if your empire is built on silence and cover up, your ass is fair game, and the Mormons are no exception. So let's go ahead and sip on some more tea. In Idaho, it wasn't just John Goodrich. There were actually dozens of lawsuits where men came forward saying that they were abused in Boy Scout troops that were directly sponsored by these said Mormons that she bet I would never speak on. 29 men in Idaho stood up to say, this happened to me. And guess what? 19 of those cases were quietly settled and swept under the rug, where checks and confidentiality agreements were signed. Some of the survivors said that the leaders in the church knew about the predators in scouting programs and still let them stay around children. And this is the part that's crazy. They weren't whispers, there were actual court filings, real people, real pain. And every single time, the church's response is always the same: deny, settle, silence. Let's go ahead and protect the institution and not the victims. So you know what? Fuck these people. The same way that they said fuck the victims, and I said what I said. Fuck them. And listen to this mess. It doesn't just stop here. Those same Mormons have a so-called abuse helpline, air quotes. Sounds good on paper, right? Except here's the catch. It's not for victims. It's for the bishops. So whenever somebody comes forward with an allegation, bishops are told to call that number. But that line doesn't connect to the police or counselors or anyone trained to help protect a survivor. It connects the church straight to a law firm. Their job is not justice, it's damage control. They advise leaders on how to shield the church first. And that is why so many reports made never make it past the walls of the institution. So once again, survivors are silenced and predators were shuffled around, and the cycle keeps going. And you know what I mean by shuffled around. It means that once they confess their sins, they're forgiven in the eyes of God, no matter how many people they molested or how many unethical, unholy things that they've done. As long as you confess, you can get sent off to another church to go and victimize other people. And the part that boils my blood, this was not by accident. It's a system, a machine built to reroute the cries from help for people that could actually save them against the abuse. So instead of dialing 911, victims were funneled into a helpline that was designed to bury their pain in legal strategy. Let that sink in. And if you think that this is just an Idaho or a US problem, think again. Globally, the same playbook continues to repeat. Did you know that in Australia, a government commission found that LDS leaders failed to report abuse to police and then pressured survivors to forgive and forget? In Canada, lawsuits accused the church of knowingly placing predators in youth programs. In the United Kingdom, the LDS faced a charity inquiry over finances and complaints of misconduct, again with accusations that reporting abuse would bring shame onto the church. Different countries, the same pattern. Deny and let's go ahead and just settle this. The hotline, the hush money, the confidentiality agreements are everywhere. It's all designed to protect the institution but bury the victims. So when somebody tells me that blood and DNA matter, I have to laugh because if it really mattered, then the blood of the victims wouldn't have been spilled. The DNA evidence would not have been ignored, and the lives destroyed wouldn't have been covered up by people who claim to be men of God. So don't talk to me about bloodlines and heritage. The only line I see is the trail of broken lives these institutions leave behind. And there you have it. You thought I wouldn't do it, and yet here I am. I am saying what you don't want heard. I am not afraid of your prophets. I'm not afraid of your bishops or your empires. If you want me quiet, you'll have to bury me with your secrets because as long as I'm still breathing, I'm going to keep speaking. And I said what I said. Silence does not scare me. Secrets do not scare me, and no amount of holy walls or hidden money will stop me from dragging the truth into the light. And for any Mormons of said institution, and for any Mormons of said institution who may be watching this, take your frustrations up with Lucy, not me. And Lucy, since you like to run your mouth, let me remind you that talking loud is easy, but standing on truth is heavy, and clearly that weight was never yours to carry. Thank you for tuning in this evening. I've actually enjoyed myself with this. As always, keep it real, and your girl is out. I have one more thing before I go because one, I'm nosy, and for two, ain't nobody going to shut me up. I was doing some research and I came across the Mormon sexual abuse database. And what I found on here, my, is actually terrifying. I will be dropping another part touching on these Mormons and their nasty ass behavior. So be on the lookout for that as well.